All right, strap in. We're about to dive into some really fascinating stuff today. You sent over this article, right? From a Hungarian spiritual website called Spiritan.hu. And let me tell you, it's a wild ride. It claims that the year 2025, it's mathematically special, like cosmically special. And get this, they break it all down using 13 equations.
Yeah. It's a pretty unique approach, I'd say. I've never seen a year analyzed like this. They're not just dealing with numbers, They're trying to find some deeper meaning, some hidden harmony within 2025.
Exactly. And while we're not exactly math geniuses, I think we can both appreciate, the beauty of patterns and the idea that numbers might have more to them than we think. So in this deep dive, we'll be exploring these 13 equations, seeing what they're all about, and trying to figure out if 2025 is truly as special as this article claims.
Sounds like a plan. Let's see what these equations have in store for us.
Okay, so the article starts off by laying some groundwork right. They connect spirituality and mathematics, arguing that math isn't just about calculations. It's a language that reveals the universe's deepest laws. They even call 2025 a code, a key to unlocking secrets of symmetry, transformation, and fulfillment. That's a pretty bold statement, wouldn't you say?
It is, definitely. It taps into that age-old desire we have to find order and meaning in the world. Math, with its patterns and logic, can feel like a powerful way to do just that.
Absolutely. It's like we're searching for a hidden blueprint to the universe, and maybe, just maybe, math is the key. But then the article dives right into these 13 equations, each one supposedly highlighting a different part of 2025's structure, as they put it.
And they start off with a bang. The first equation presents 2025 as the sum of the cubes of the first 9 natural numbers. 1 cubed plus 2 cubed all the way up to 9 cubed equals 2025.
And they immediately focus on that number 9, claiming it's evidence of universal harmony, because 9 represents completion and unity in a lot of spiritual traditions.
That's a really crucial point. The article isn't just about the math itself, it's about layering those symbolic interpretations on top of the math, so that number 9, with its spiritual baggage, becomes a key part of their argument.
Right. It's like they're building their case piece by piece, using both mathematical and symbolic language.
Exactly. And they continue along that path with the second equation. It simply states that 2025 is a perfect square, 45 squared.
Now, that might seem pretty straightforward, but they actually emphasize the visual aspect of a square, connecting it to stability and harmony. It's like they're saying, look, even the shape of the equation is pointing towards balance.
Precisely. They're using that visual representation to reinforce their idea of 2025 as a year of order and equilibrium.
Okay, then they hit us with equation 3. This one describes 2025 as the sum of all odd numbers from 1 to 89. Now, I'll admit, I'm not a mathematician, but I know that's a lot of odd numbers.
It is, but the article connects this pattern to the idea of gradual growth and structure. Think of it like building blocks. Each odd number adds to the whole, steadily building up to 2025.
So they're suggesting each year leading up to 2025 contributes to this big culmination, like it's all part of a larger plan.
That's the implication, yeah. And this idea of structure gets even more pronounced in equation 4, where they present 2025 as a triangular number. Now, have you ever heard of triangular numbers?
I've heard the term, but honestly, I'm not sure I could explain it.
Well, picture arranging objects into a triangle, right? The first row has 1 object, the second has 2, and so on. The total number of objects, that's a triangular number. So visually, you have this solid, stable shape, like a pyramid. Each element has its own place.
Oh, okay, I see. So they're using the idea of triangular numbers to emphasize this concept of 2025 being a year of stability and order.
Exactly. They're stacking the evidence, both mathematical and symbolic, to build their case for 2025's significance.
Got it. So far, they've used cubes, squares, even triangles to make their point. But then things get kind of mystical with equation 6. Here, they describe 2025 as the sum of the squares of what they call magical numbers. 3 squared plus 12 squared plus 24 squared plus 36 squared.
And again, they emphasize the visual aspect, right? Connecting squares to architecture, to art, even to natural forms. It's like they're saying these magical numbers through their squares give 2025 a special kind of energy.
Okay, now we're getting to the good stuff. Equation 7 is where they really lean into the mystical side of things. It breaks down 2025 as the sum of squares of 4 Fibonacci numbers, 3, 8, 13, and 21.
Ah, the Fibonacci sequence. One of the most fascinating patterns in math. Each number is the sum of the 2 that come before it. 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so on. It appears everywhere in nature, from the arrangement of flower petals to the spiral of nautilus shell.
And the article goes deep into the symbolism of each of these Fibonacci numbers, claiming that 3 represents creation, 8 symbolizes infinity, 13 is linked to transformation, and 21 represents fulfillment. It's a lot to take in, but it definitely adds a layer of intrigue.
It does, and it raises an interesting question. Does giving all this meaning to these numbers change how you see the equation itself?
I'm honestly not sure. On one hand, the idea that these numbers have such deep symbolic meanings, it's fascinating. But on the other hand, I'm a little skeptical. It's almost too perfect, like they're forcing it a bit.
I understand that hesitation.
Yeah.
It's important to be critical of these interpretations. But even if we don't completely buy into the specific meanings they give, it's hard to deny that the Fibonacci sequence is a remarkable pattern. And its presence in this equation does add a certain mystery.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder if there really are these hidden connections between math and the bigger universe, right?
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting. We're exploring not just the math itself, but the potential for a deeper meaning and the very human desire to find those connections.
All right, let's keep going. Equation 8 presents 2025 as the sum of 3 cubes, 10 cubed plus 9 cubed plus 6 cubed. And again, they highlight the supposed significance of each number, further emphasizing this idea that 2025 is built from meaningful components.
Yeah, it's like they're suggesting that every single part of these equations, from the numbers themselves to the operations used, contributes to some grand design.
Right. Then, equation 9 flips the script. It presents 2025 as a difference of 3 cubes, 16 cubed minus 12 cubed minus 7 cubed. They focus on this idea of subtraction creating something new, linking it to sculpture and the concept of achieving balance by removing elements.
That's a really clever interpretation. Instead of just addition building something up, they're highlighting how subtraction can also lead to creation and balance.
Definitely adds another layer to how we think about these mathematical operations, doesn't it?
It does. And it keeps things interesting. They're always finding new ways to interpret these equations and connect them to broader themes.
Totally. So equation 10 brings us back to familiar territory, triangles and squares. It describes 2025 as a product of 25 and the sum of 1 through 13, excluding 10. They present this as showing both stability, squares, because 25 is 5 squared, and growth, triangular numbers, because the sum of consecutive numbers can form triangles.
They're combining different mathematical concepts again to reinforce their idea of 2025 as a year of both stability and progress. It's all about balance and harmony.
Got it. Then equation 11 kind of echoes equation 6, describing 2025 as the sum of squares, specifically from 1 squared to 9 squared. And they highlight, once again, the order and harmony found in squares, connecting them to patterns in nature, like crystal structures and planetary orbits.
It's almost like they're suggesting that 2025 aligns with these fundamental forces of nature, because of these mathematical connections.
Pretty grand claim. Okay, let's move on to equation 12. This one presents 2025 as a product of prime numbers, 5 squared times 3 to the 4th power. Now, I remember from school that prime numbers are special, but can you remind us what makes them so unique?
Sure. Prime numbers are whole numbers greater than 1 that are only divisible by 1 in themselves. They're considered the building blocks of all other numbers, because any whole number can be expressed as a unique product of prime numbers.
Ah, that's right. So are they emphasizing the fundamental nature of prime numbers, connecting them to the building blocks of the universe then?
Exactly. And they even tie it to modern technology.
That's a great way to make that abstract concept feel more relevant and tangible. So prime numbers are like the universe's secret code, and they play a key role in 2025.
That's the implication they're making. And finally, we get to equation 13, which brings us full circle, emphasizing balance and stability by describing 2025 as a product of 3 odd numbers, 3, 15, and 45. They highlight the role of the number 3 as a foundation, just like they did in equation 7 with the Fibonacci sequence.
It's interesting how they come back to that number 3, and symbolism creates a sense of closure, like they've woven a complete tapestry of mathematical and symbolic meaning around 2025.
Absolutely. But hold on, they're not done yet. Remember, they also mentioned that 2025 is the year of the wood snake in Chinese astrology, adding another layer of symbolism to their interpretation.
Right. And they suggest that this alignment of mathematical patterns and astrological symbolism makes 2025 especially significant for those on a spiritual journey. It's like they're presenting this convergence of different systems of knowledge, all pointing to the importance of this one year.
It's a bold claim, that's for sure. And we've only just started scratching the surface of their argument. I think it's time to dig deeper into the implications of these mathematical patterns and what they might really tell us about 2025. Welcome back. So we spent that last part really breaking down these 13 equations that supposedly hold the secrets to 2025, according to this Hungarian spiritual website, Spiritan.hu.
And it's been a fascinating journey so far. We've seen how they kind of blend these mathematical concepts, like Fibonacci sequences and prime numbers, with spiritual interpretations. Things like balance, transformation, and fulfillment.
It's a very unique approach, that's for sure. They've woven together this intricate tapestry of mathematical patterns and symbolic meanings, but I still feel like they're building towards something bigger.
Exactly. So let's try to dig a little deeper. What are they actually saying about 2025 beyond all these complex mathematical patterns?
Well, they seem to be suggesting that 2025 holds a special kind of energy, a potential for significant change, maybe even a catalyst for spiritual awakening or transformation.
And they're connecting this back to those themes of balance and harmony we saw in the equations. Like 2025 is a point where all these forces converge to create something really unique.
That's the idea. It's like a point of culmination where all these mathematical and spiritual threads weave together to create a special opportunity for growth and change.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Right.
But they also mentioned that 2025 is the year of the wood snake in Chinese astrology. How does that fit into their whole interpretation?
Right. It's another layer of symbolism they're adding into their narrative. The wood snake is associated with adaptability, intelligence, and a focus on personal growth. They're suggesting that these qualities kind of resonate with the mathematical patterns we've been discussing.
Oh, I see. So it's like the energy of the wood snake further amplifies this potential for transformation in 2025. It's all starting to connect now.
That's how I interpret it. They're essentially creating this convergence of mathematical and astrological forces, all pointing toward this one year as a moment of really significant change.
It's definitely a compelling idea, even if it is a bit out there. But let's be real. Can numbers really predict or even influence the future?
That's a question that has fascinated humanity for centuries, Numerology, the study of the spiritual significance of numbers, has a long and complex history.
And different cultures around the world have given different meanings to certain numbers. It's truly a global phenomenon.
Absolutely. And while some people might find these beliefs profound and insightful, others might see them as superstition or just a way of finding patterns where none really exist. It all comes down to perspective, I think.
So where do you stand on that spectrum? Do you believe that numbers hold some kind of inherent power?
I personally approach these things with a healthy dose of skepticism, but I also recognize the powerful symbolic significance that numbers have in many cultures. And there's a certain beauty in exploring those connections, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's more about appreciating the patterns and the creative way they've linked them to a larger narrative.
Yeah.
It's definitely thought-provoking, even if you don't fully believe in all the spiritual interpretations.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that even seemingly simple mathematical concepts can have these deep cultural and symbolic connections.
Right. It makes you think about how we see time and the importance we place on specific dates or years. Maybe we're just programmed to search for meaning in these things.
Perhaps we are. It reminds us that time isn't just a straight line moving forward, but a cyclical process with repeating patterns and themes.
And maybe those cycles are reflected in those mathematical patterns we see all around us. That's a pretty fascinating thought.
It is. But for now, let's maybe come back down to earth a little. What are you thinking?
Well, I was wondering, what are some practical things we can take away from this whole deep dive, even if we're not totally sold on the whole spiritual awakening thing for 2025?
That's a good question. I think the article gives us a valuable reminder to be open to the unexpected and to embrace change. Whether or not 2025 holds some special significance, it reminds us that time keeps marching on and that we have the power to shape our own destinies,
I like that. It's like a call to action, right? Don't just wait around for things to happen. Actively participate in creating the future you want.
Exactly. And even if you're not really into the spiritual aspect of it all, the article highlights the importance of finding that balance and harmony in our lives, both personally and in how we connect with the world around us.
Those are some pretty universal values, wouldn't you say? Things we can all strive for no matter what we believe. It's a reminder to be mindful and intentional about how we live our lives.
I agree. And in that sense, the year 2025 can be like a symbolic reminder of those aspirations, a time to reflect on our own journeys and how we can create a more balanced and fulfilling future.
Okay, you've got me feeling inspired now. We've explored the equations, the spiritual interpretations, even touched on numerology. What's next in this deep dive?
Well, we focus a lot on the article's perspective, haven't we? But I think it'd be really interesting to consider some alternative views. How do other cultures and belief systems approach the significance of numbers and their connection to time and destiny?
That's a great idea. It would be fascinating to compare and contrast those different perspectives on numerology and see if there are any common threads or recurring themes.
Exactly. And that's precisely what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive. We're going to widen our lens and delve into how different cultures and traditions have interpreted the power and symbolism of numbers throughout history.
Sounds good to me. Listeners, stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive into the mathematical and spiritual mysteries of 2025. We'll be right back. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive. Over the last two parts, we've been unpacking this fascinating article that claims the year 2025 holds some hidden mathematical and spiritual significance.
We really dove deep into their analysis of those 13 equations, looked at those symbolic meanings they give to specific numbers, and even thought about how Chinese astrology plays into their whole interpretation.
Exactly. But now, as we promised, it's time to broaden our perspective a bit. We're going to explore how other cultures and belief systems view numbers and their connection to time and destiny.
This is where things get really interesting, because you start to see how numbers are deeply embedded in our minds across history and different cultures.
Okay, so where should we start this global numerology tour of ours?
Well, let's travel back in time a bit. Back to those ancient civilizations like the Egyptians and the Greeks. They were deeply fascinated by mathematics and geometry, seeing them as more than just tools for measuring things.
Oh, yeah. I remember learning about the pyramids and how they're filled with all these mathematical ratios and proportions. It's mind-blowing how they achieved that level of precision without modern technology.
Exactly. And those ratios, they weren't just chosen randomly. They believed they reflected a cosmic order, a divine harmony that was present in everything.
So they saw numbers as a way to understand and connect with the divine. That's actually pretty similar to what we saw in the Spiritan article, even though the specific interpretations are different.
Exactly. It highlights this universal human desire to find meaning and order in the world. And for so many of those ancient cultures, math provided this powerful framework for doing that.
It's amazing how those ancient beliefs still resonate with our modern fascination with numerology, isn't it?
It is. Now, how about we shift our focus a little to ancient China? They had a rich tradition of numerology, too, deeply intertwined with their understanding of yin and yang, the five elements, and the flow of energy.
Oh, I've definitely heard about those lucky and unlucky numbers in Chinese culture. Didn't they even consult numerologists when they were designing buildings or planning big events?
They did. Certain numbers, like 8, are associated with wealth and prosperity, while others, like 4, are considered, well, not so lucky, because the word sounds similar to the word for death.
So numbers hold a lot of weight in Chinese society. They influence everything from architecture to personal decisions.
They do. And this strong belief in the power of numbers is something we see in many cultures, both ancient and modern.
It's like we're hardwired to search for meaning in numbers, to see them as more than just abstract quantities.
It really does seem that way. Whether we're looking at them through a spiritual lens, a cultural lens, or a purely mathematical lens, numbers definitely hold a certain fascination for us.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into the world of numbers and their supposed connection to 2025, what's the key takeaway for our listeners, would you say?
I think the most important lesson here is that the meaning we attach to a specific year, any year, really, it's ultimately a reflection of our own beliefs and how we see the world.
You're right. Whether we see 2025 as a year of big changes, a point of balance, or just another year in the grand scheme of things, it's really up to us to find the meaning in it.
Exactly. And maybe the most valuable thing we can gain from exploring all these different perspectives is a deeper understanding of how everything's connected.
The math, the symbolism, the cultural beliefs, it's all part of this larger tapestry that connects us to each other and to the universe, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And by exploring those connections, we gain a much richer understanding of ourselves and the world we live in.
Well said. That's a great point to end on. We've journeyed through mathematical equations, spiritual interpretations, and different cultural beliefs, all to try and understand the possible significance of 2025. But in the end, the meaning we find is really up to each of us.
And remember, the journey of discovery never really ends, does it? So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and see what you find in this fascinating world of numbers and beyond.
And that's a wrap for this deep dive into 2025. Thanks for listening.